everyone, this is Liz Easton, and I wanted to take a quick second to invite you to listen in to the PC Book Club. Wait, I need to start again. Hi, everyone. This is Liz Easton, and I wanted to take a quick second to invite you to listen to the PC Book Club, aka PCBC. Every so often, Ricardo Avila and I chat about the books that you should be reading right now. It's just like sitting on your own private book club discussion, only there's probably slightly more references to true crime and Charles Dickens. I did not write this.
We may have to re-record that anyway, because I think you just said it's just like sitting on your own private book club.
She did. That was great. Sitting on a book club. Sitting on a private book club. That's pretty racy. Sorry.
Should I try again? It's just like sitting in on your own private book club discussion, only there's probably slightly more references to true crime and Charles Dickens. So if you're looking for the class with an occasional dose of the sass, then check out the PC Book Club right here on the Popping Collars feed. Class and sass.
Love it.
I was praying to the Lord for some fun, but I guess you didn't have some.
Hi, I'm Greg Knight.
Hey, I'm Ryan Parker.
And this is PCTV, a Popping Collars side project where we randomly select a current TV show that you should be streaming right now. Ryan and I have each picked 6 shows apiece from the top streaming apps, and this month we're talking about the Netflix series Midnight Mass.
We tend to dislike mysteries. We feel uncomfortable not knowing. The more that we know, the less we bend, the more brittle we become, the easier to break.
That wasn't an act of God. Wasn't it? It's okay to just look at the world and say, why? I don't understand. Who are you? You know who I am.
Ooh, it's spooky season, Ryan.
It's spooky season when we're recording this. When are you posting it?
I think this episode comes out right before Halloween.
That's perfect. I'm really thankful. I believe you picked this.
I did pick it, yeah.
And I'm so thankful that it forced me to revisit what I think is a very underrated, or maybe like audience underrated show. I think it's a really good series. I'm excited to talk about it with you.
I have the log line for this show miniseries. What? This
limited
is one of those
series
things that's hard to catalog. Miniseries, I guess.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
Okay, I have the log line. Here it goes. An isolated island community experiences miraculous events and frightening omens after the arrival of a charismatic, mysterious young priest. What flesh should we throw on these old bones here, Ryan?
I mean, that's it. I mean, I remember watching the show the first time years ago when it first came out, and looking back on that experience and realizing that I must not have been paying really close attention. I can't remember how quickly I realized what was actually going on, but at some point we're going to have to say spoiler alert here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We're not going to be able to talk about it without spoilers, unfortunately.
Yeah. So let's just say, this is your fair warning. Yeah. Come back to this after you watch the series. This is a vampire show. Mm-hmm. But I think it's one of the better mainstream vampire shows we've had in a while, because it asks us to consider a lot of things. So yeah, a guy shows a young priest shows up. He's carrying a wooden chest with him. That's always a sign. But it's in as much about, I think, the nature of belief and religious identity and community as it is anything haunting by a vampire. It's really more about, takes place on a very small island, probably a couple hundred residents max, and it's a very tightly knit community, probably like one I grew up in, small town, not that small, but small town. And I think it invites us to talk about religious practice, religious identity in that kind of setting in a really neat way.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that the key parts that the logline misses that I think is important is that, yes, there is a mysterious young priest that returns to the island who may or may not have literally sold his soul to the devil in order to sort of gain vitality. But also there is a young man who has recently been released from prison who is going through a crisis of faith and has experienced a tremendous religious trauma. And those two stories are what's colliding at the heart of this show.
Yes.
One is rebirth for a character, and the other is a crisis of faith and maybe a loss of faith for the other character.
Of the Lord. I'm not hardly unique in this room either, am I? I mean, you've killed someone.
I don't remember it.
You were drunk and you don't remember.
I was drunk. I was at a party. It was a party, and I drank too much.
No, come on, don't do that.
That's what happened.
Well, there is meaning here. There is purpose here that you're willfully ignoring.
It was fucking ordinary. What happened? There weren't even skid marks on my side of the road. I never hit the brakes. I didn't even tap the brakes. I was literally asleep at the wheel. That is what happened. So don't talk to me about God moving through you or doing his will. You don't know a thing about me, and our stories are not the same.
The guilt you feel, the remorse.
Yeah.
You feel that every day.
Yes.
Even though you didn't mean to do it.
Yes.
See, I killed Joe. I watched myself do it with my own hands, and I have no guilt. None. No remorse. I have been spared all of that. How does that make you feel?
Disgusted.
How does it make you feel?
Angry.
Nope. How does that make you feel?
Fucking angry.
No! I promised you complete honesty, and I am giving that to you. And I'm tired of you lying to me, Riley Flynn. I've forgiven it time and again, but today is critical for us, and I am finished. Complete honesty. How does it make you feel?
Jealous.
God and Heavenly Father, grant us the serenity to accept that which we cannot change and the courage to change that which we can. Courage.
Hot takes.
Courage.
What are
Let's find out now.
your initial takes on Midnight Mass when you first watched it or in this recent rewatch?
Well, we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of this, which is the theology corner for a show like this.
Yeah.
But hot takes wise, just again, that I think Mike Flanagan's one of the coolest writers and directors working in this genre. And the fact that he has kind of what seemed to be complete control over this, it felt rewarding. I don't know if these are hot takes. This is just kind of gut reaction. It held up on a rewatch for me. I love the setting. I love the characters. I love the troupe that he's assembled, that he works with across films. I think Katie Siegel is really great. She's a perfect scream queen. She's more than that. I don't want to totally pigeonhole her. I think she's a very good actress. I really like the whole cast. There are characters that infuriated me. There are characters that I love. Well, there's one character that infuriated me. We'll come back to that. But yeah, I don't know, like hot takes. I like it when it felt like the Friday Night Lights of vampire shows.
Is that because Zach Gilford is in here?
I mean, a little bit, but also because like it wasn't just about vampires or the vampire. So yeah, I guess that's my hot take. It's Friday Night Lights for vampire series. So
yeah,
what about you?
Well, you know what stood out to me probably more this time than it did the first time is this idea of slow horror. which is a form of horror that I think is harder to sell in today's day and age.
That's Flanagan's MO, right? Like that's his genre.
Yeah, it's a bit of his calling card. I mean, he had some early on, I would say, sort of typical, 21st century horror stuff with Oculus and Hush, and even Gerald's Game to a certain extent. But his Netflix series are very slow, very eerie, very creepy, not jump scares, more sort of psychological terror.
Mhm.
So The Haunting of Hill House, Haunting of Bly Manor, Fall of the House of Usher, and then this Midnight Mass is probably the most accessible and the most sort of action packed, if that can be used.
Yeah.
Than those others. But they're all very much a slow boil, unsettling horror than they are the jump scare, all of that stuff horror.
And have you watched all of his series?
I have seen most of them. I did not see Follow the House of Usher, and I didn't see Midnight Club. That was one of the other.
I couldn't get into Midnight Club. I watched all of Fall of the House of Usher. I thought that was interesting. I think for me, this is his best series. Midnight Mass is the best for me.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
But
I think
I know folks love the Haunting of series as well, right? The Manors.
Yeah.
The haunted house stories.
Well, and those serve two sort of functions. I think Haunting of Hill House, there's sort of a game that you can play where it's like spot all the Easter egg ghosts that are hidden in the background of each game, kind of thing. But ultimately, I don't think that's the point of the show. It's more sort of about creeping dread and how sort of things can fester in families.
Mm-hmm.
And they just kind of like that trauma just kind of exists and grows out.
That is the Fall of House of Usher is like, that is exactly what that is. Yeah.
All that being said, it feels like Mike Flanagan has more in common with Edgar Allan Poe and Henry James than he does someone like James Wan or Ari Aster or like people that are living in the horror genre in the 21st century. He seems to be a throwback to like early 20th century horror.
I think that's a great take. I mean, I think that's where he resides. I've often wanted to speak with him, just given the work that we do on the PR side, that tends to gravitate towards conversations about spirituality and religion and things like that. I think he would be a great conversation partner here, obviously. But I'm wondering, what's his background in terms of religion? Because I think he understands it, right? I think that there's been some sort of intimate firsthand experience that I also don't think that this is completely, well, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead here. Maybe we can come back to this. Like, I don't think like a lot of horror films do. Well, actually, horror films don't do it quite as much, like ridiculing religion.
Yeah, horror as a genre tends to take it more seriously.
Yeah. My PhD advisor was like, it's the last line of defense for religion and pop culture that takes it seriously, right? Because you kind of have to. If you're going to have so much supernatural and demons and all of these things. But I think he also takes practice and community seriously and is kind of mining that in ways that other titles haven't. So I know we can come back to that, but
I want to save most of our Mike Flanagan talk for Industry Corner, as a matter of fact. Because
cool.
I'm sort of curious about what his future looks like, and I'd love to talk about that a little bit more.
Cool.
So before we get there, what is your best scene, sequence, episode, or storyline from Midnight Mass?
Well, for me, and it's still held up, it's I just want to make sure it's Riley and Aaron are two of the characters who are dealing with some real trauma in their lives, self-inflicted and otherwise. But there's a scene in episode, I've got my notes here, believe it or not, Greg. I've got notes. I just want to make sure I get the right episode number. Episode 4, Lamentations. And these two characters who were somewhat Riley and Aaron. Riley who we meet at the very beginning of episode 1, is involved in a drunk driving accident that kills a young woman.
Mm-hmm.
He goes to jail. Years later, fast forward, and he shows up back at home on this island, and a high school love interest who's also returned. She's teaching at the local school. She's pregnant, and she miscarries. And so, therefore, these two are dealing with death in very intimate and traumatic ways. And they have a conversation about what happens after we die.
Yeah.
What happens when we die, Riley?
I don't know. And I don't trust anyone who tells us they do, but I can speak for myself, I guess.
Then speak for yourself. What happens when you die?
My body stops functioning. Shut down. All at once or gradually. My breathing stops, my heart stops beating. Clinical death. And a bit later, like 5 whole minutes later, my brain cells start dying. But in the meantime, in between, maybe my brain releases a flood of DMT. It's a psychedelic drug released when we dream, so I dream. I dream bigger than I have ever dreamed before because it's all of it. Just the last dump of DMT all at once, and my neurons are firing, and I'm seeing this firework display of memories and imagination, and I am just tripping. I'm really tripping balls because my mind's rifling through the memories, long and short term, and the dreams mixed with the memories, and it's a curtain call. Dream to end all dreams. One last great dream as my mind empties the fucking missile silos, and then I stop. My brain activity ceases, and there is nothing left of me. Pain. No memory, no awareness that I ever was, no, that I ever hurt someone. That I ever killed someone. Everything is as it was before me. And the electricity disperses from my brain till it's just dead tissue. Oblivion. And all the other little things that make me up, microbes and bacterium and the billion other little things that live on my eyelashes and my hair and my mouth and on my skin and in my gut and everywhere else, they just keep on living and eating. And I'm serving a purpose. I'm feeding life. And I'm broken apart, and all the littlest pieces of me are just recycled, and I'm billions of other places, and my atoms are in plants, bugs, and animals, and I am like the stars that are in the sky. There one moment, and then just scattered across the goddamn cosmos.
It struck me the first time I watched it, and it stuck with me again this second time. And there's a callback to that conversation in the last episode that puts a spin on it, and I think in a very, very interesting way. So without question, for me, that was the best scene, where you have somebody who is essentially agnostic at best, atheist, or not at best, but agnostic or atheist, who has kind of left his faith, talking about what happens to our bodies when we die in about as beautiful a way as you could, and scientifically grounded, kind of biologically grounded, and it's stunning. And then you have someone like Erin, who is still holding to her faith, even though she's been through some trauma with it, talking about what she thinks happens. And I would say that's a bit more traditional kind of evangelical conservative Christian idea of like what happens to your soul when you die. But the fact that they could share and both see the beauty in the other's approach. They don't argue. There's no criticism of the other. It's just, oh, that's lovely. And you know what's really interesting is that Riley, the atheist agnostic, says to her, "I really hope you're right."
Right. Yeah.
And I
that's how they
freaking
sum
love
it.
that. I love that. So, okay. Sorry to belabor the point.
I would just say a few things. One is you're absolutely right. That is definitively the best scene of the series. And I think that it critically comes at the midpoint of the entire story. Like, I think it
does.
is
Yeah.
the crux upon which the entire story is built.
Yep.
And so I think that even for Flanagan, like, the whole point is this conversation that these two characters are having with each other.
That's why I want to talk to him.
Yeah. Two things really quickly about where those characters are coming from. Yes, Riley was involved in a drunk driving accident where he took the life of an innocent girl. And if you remember in that opening scene, he's saying the Lord's Prayer when the show opens.
Yes.
And the paramedic is in the background saying, "I can't believe it's drunks like you that survive these things and innocent people that die," right?
Yes.
And so that's the critical moment of his loss of faith. Is that moment, that statement, and the fact that the Lord's Prayer isn't going to fix it.
Yeah.
The brokenness that he's created, right?
Yeah.
And then the other key point for Aaron is the love interest, right? The high school.
Yep.
The other key point for her with this conversation is that, yes, she's lost her child, but her child has disappeared. You could classify it as a miscarriage, but it's more like the fetus has just been erased from existence. It's just gone. It's like her body was never pregnant to begin with. And that has to do with sort of the way that the vampire rules work in this show. Like, but it's almost like a reverse Virgin Mary situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, instead of being sort of gifted this pregnancy, your pregnancy has been taken away miraculously. And so for her, she needs to figure out like that there needs to be a meaning to that, right? You can see how that character is like, this can't just be that my unborn child was erased from existence. There has to be something to grasp onto.
Yeah.
So you've got two characters that are coming to each other, one from a very real place, one from a very surreal place, and they're looking for meaning as a result, in this conversation with each other.
That's good.
Two other sequences that I would just point out just really quickly. One is the recovery conversations that happen between Zach Gilford and Hamish Linklater are great. And those are the two characters. That's the priest and Riley. So those are the two characters that are coming back to the island that we talked about before. And just the way that they interact and the way that they make a case for their viewpoint. It's a really unique conversation, and it doesn't devolve into after school special dialogue. Like, it's treated very seriously. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I thought was good.
Alcohol isn't good or bad. But the version of me that would come out when I had enough to drink, he was bad. He was selfish and careless, and he ruined my life. There was a saboteur inside of me. And I always thought we'd work it out. We learn to live with each other because he wouldn't really hurt me. Not me. I fed him, so he wouldn't hurt me. And then one morning I woke up and found out he had killed someone. I killed someone. So who's to blame there? I am to blame there. God. But he just kind of let it happen, didn't he? See, that's the part I cannot square. Because you're right, there's so much suffering in the world. So much. And then there's this higher power. This higher power who could erase all that pain, just wave his hand and make it all go away, but doesn't? No. No, thank you. The worst part is that it lets all the rest of us off the hook. We can all just stand by and watch Lisa Scarborough wheel herself around town. We can watch Joe Collie slowly drink himself to death. We can watch so many people just slip into these bottomless pits of awful, and we can stand it. We can tolerate it because we can say things like God works in mysterious ways. Like there's a plan, like something good's gonna come out of it. Nothing good came out of my drinking. Nothing good came out of me killing that poor girl. Nothing good came out of Joe Collie's drinking, and not a single good thing comes out of Lisa never being able to walk again. Nothing good came out of a metric ton of crude oil filling up the bay. And the only fucking thing that lets people stand by watching all this suffering doing fucking nothing is the idea that suffering can be a gift from God. What a monstrous idea, Father.
And then finally, the only other thing that I would say is the Riley's death scene on the boat is shocking. It is viscerally shocking when you see it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen this film, but it reminds you of a film that came out in 2020, I think, called Saint Maud, which is about
I need to see that film. I know exactly what. Yeah.
It's about a woman who experiences religious visions, but the way that the film is shot is that it's hard to discern if she's actually having visions or if she's experiencing mental illness, right?
Yeah.
And so that scene of where Riley is on the boat and the sun is coming up and his fate, it hangs in the balance there. And you see a miraculous way that story plays out. And then you see a real life way that story plays out. And they're two very different images. And I think it takes your breath away when you first see it.
Yeah. Another scene real quick that I was just looking over my notes and I recalled is when Lisa forgives Joe.
Mm-hmm.
I love moments of lived religious practice, or kind of spirituality, and there's a lot more going on in that whole leading up to that. And I don't want to spoil everything, but I thought that was quite effective too.
Yeah. Best performance, come for, stay for.
It's come for the Flanagan troupe, and I think Katie Siegel, like I said before, I think she's great and good fun. But it's Hamish, right?
Yeah, it is.
For Hamish. I hate to admit it. Which I also, another hot take. There were moments rewatching this where I felt like this is a vampire by Lake Wobegon and Garrison Keillor.
Right. Yeah.
So many times where he talks and he kind of has a stutter and he's quiet as the priest, and I'm just like, is this Garrison Keillor narrating life on Crockpot Island? It's Linklater.
Yeah, he's so good in the show. He has to, every character, a lot of the characters on the show have to play older people in younger bodies. And he does this so well. It's this just sort of like when you find yourself with renewed vitality and renewed energy, what do you do with it? Kind of thing. He's just great. I agree with you. I think for me, it was come from Mike Flanagan at this point, because Flanagan had pretty much established himself as, this is post Dr. Sleep, all of that stuff. So it was come from Mike Flanagan's new Netflix series. And then Hamish was just tremendous in the show.
Yeah.
When we die, what happens?
Speaking for myself?
Speaking for yourself.
Myself. That's the problem. That's the whole problem with the whole thing. That word. Self. That's not the word. That's not right. That isn't. How did I forget that? When did I forget that? The body stops a cell at a time, but the brain keeps firing those neurons. Little lightning bolts like fireworks inside, and I thought I'd despair or feel afraid, but I don't feel any of that. None of it. Because I'm too busy. I'm too busy in this moment, remembering. Of course, I remember that every atom in my body was forged in a star. This matter, this body is mostly just empty space after all, and solid matter, it's just energy vibrating very slowly, and there is no me. There never was. The electrons of my body mingle and dance with the electrons of the ground below me and the air. I'm no longer breathing. And I remember there is no point where any of that ends and I begin. I remember I am energy, not memory, not self. My name, my personality, my choices all came after me. I was before them, and I will be after, and everything else is pictures, picked up along the way. Fleeting little dreamlets printed on the tissue of my dying brain. And I am the lightning that jumps between. I am the energy firing the neurons, and I'm returning. Just by remembering, I'm returning home. It's like a drop of water falling back into the ocean, of which it's always been a part. All things, a part. All of us, a part. You, me, and my little girl, and my mother, and my father. Everyone who's ever been. Every plant, every animal, every atom, every star, every galaxy. All of it. More galaxies in the universe than grains of sand on the beach, and that's what we're talking about when we say God. The One. The cosmos and its infinite dreams. We are the cosmos dreaming of itself. It's simply a dream that I think is my life every time. But I'll forget this. I always do. I always forget my dreams. But now, in this split second, in the moment I remember, the instant I remember, I comprehend everything at once. There is no time. There is no death. Life is a dream. It's a wish. Made again and again and again and again and again and again and on into eternity. And I am all of it. I am everything. I am all. I am that I am.
Let's go to Theology Corner. A lot to unpack here. Do you want to
Yes.
kick it off?
Well, I don't even know where to start. I mean, I guess we could go back to that conversation about what happens to us after we die, because, you know, there's a lot here too with theodicy.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, again, you know, how like a loving God can allow or stand by while people suffer. That comes up a couple times throughout the series. Also, this idea of God, like with Erin's pregnancy, the way that she talks about her baby in that conversation of the fetus is God sent that child and then called it back. Like, none of this stuff makes sense. Like, if you listen to it with any sort of rational thinking, that just God doesn't work that way. Like, I understand that can bring you comfort. I don't want to deny that to somebody whose faith brings them extreme comfort, but that's what that is. It's a blanket. Mm-hmm. It's not any sort of rational understanding of theology or the way God works in the world. I mean, because it begs more questions than it answers.
Well, it could be a way that a God could work in the world, right?
Fair
Like
enough. Okay,
if
yes.
you,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Not
mean,
one
if
that
you
not
had,
one that I'm particularly interested in.
right, not one that you would want to worship, but
Yeah.
yeah, one that wanted to mess with you. Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely how I mean, there are stories about Zeus that feel very similar to this, right? Like this idea of like humans are sort of playthings to just
Oh,
kind of mess. Yeah.
Sidebar, currently on Netflix, Chaos. That should be our next show that we discuss. It's exactly what you're talking about. Continue. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying that, like, but is that a God worthy of, yeah, I don't know, worship or allegiance or whatever? I don't know. I agree with you. I think that this series is the best portrayal in any medium of what a crisis of faith or a collapse in belief looks like. It feels autobiographical. Like it feels so close to getting at this ideas that it's impossible for you to think that this isn't some lived experience for Mike Flanagan.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and it always takes every character's point of view seriously, even if that character's point of view is pure evil.
Bev.
With
Bev.
regards to like, manipulating the situation to have it, reinforce your particular theology, right?
Well, the
Or
mental
using the Bible as a weapon, the way that there's a character on this show that does.
well, it's Bev. I mean, that's who you're talking. If there's a real villain in this series, it's Bev. It's not even the vampire, like the creature, because that thing just is what it is in a way. And you even have Paul, the priest, who's just, I feel like in some ways caught in the middle. At some point, the events get completely out of hand for him, and then you have Bev, who is you're in the Episcopal, or had been in the Episcopal Church. What's her role? She's like a deaconess. Her mental and like theological and biblical gymnastics to pivot at every turn to explain what's happening, or to explain away what's happening, or as you said, to punish people, is really breathtaking.
No one is taking a single thing away. All of the required lessons are still being taught. We haven't touched the curriculum, so we get that off the table right now.
Respectfully, that's not the issue.
I understand. Given your religious affiliation, you might find the fact that your son is interested in the Bible offensive.
Not at all.
I suppose. But I would say that if he is interested in Jesus, why not allow him to learn a little about
That's
it?
so not the issue. And thank you for this opportunity to clarify. He knows all about Jesus.
Well, I imagine not quite all.
Muslims believe that Jesus is a prophet of God, and that the Injil, the Bible, was revealed to him, as the Torah was revealed to Moses before that. See, we love Jesus, and we love the message that was revealed to him.
Well, I suppose we learn something new every day, don't we?
But we also believe, after the time of Jesus, thanks to the interference of men, there were deviations in Christianity. People altered the message, priests, popes, kings. That's why there's so many versions of the Bible. People got in there, made their changes.
I don't think this is relevant.
We do, though, believe that the Bible contains some of the original word of God.
That's very generous of you.
But we also believe that God revealed the Quran as the final message, never to be altered, to reassert the original revelations of the previous prophets.
I don't think that this is the place to discuss where our beliefs about Scripture might diverge.
Exactly. There it is. That's the issue. And that's why.
And guess what? We've all known Bev in our life. If you grew up in any sort of religious community, there was at least a Bev.
Yeah. Those are the people that tend to drive people who are having traumatic religious experience away, right?
Yes.
Because it's like, oh, well, the reason that you're going through this problem is because it's you, because the Bible says X, Y, and Z. And it's like, you're reading meaning into a text rather than drawing meaning out of a text, right?
It's me? You're sure it's not the 300-pound Dracula over here
Yeah,
trying to eat me? Like, that's my fault. What did I do? Yeah.
Exactly. And it does this thing that I absolutely I come back to over and over again. I think we even talked about it last time with sex education, which is this idea of you writing up the rules for what God is and how God acts in the world. And as soon as you become the God of God, you are in the wrong 1,000%. Like
Yeah,
you are never
always.
right at that point.
Always. Another thing about this, the way in which religion defines existence for that community, ritual, tradition,
Mm-hmm.
relationships, meaning making. I felt like that was, in terms of like theology corner, a strength of the show. And then also not only the ways in which the characters act out, talk about faith, belief, spirituality, but the way that's just baked into the show itself,
Right.
from the music, the score, the imagery. Like, it's not just that, oh, I can write characters who are dealing with religious trauma. Like, I also have a great music producer who understands hymns and the right place to put those. And I thought it was quite beautiful in places too. The religious components, not all of it, not being critical of all of it. Right.
Mm-hmm. I would also add just one quick thing, which is that it's hard to watch the show and divorce it from some Stephen King elements. I think Flanagan, it's clear that he really likes Stephen King stuff. He's done a couple of Stephen King adaptations, and there tend to be themes of like from King's novels that show up in his shows. The one that this is clearly a one for one, it seems like to me, is there's a comp between this and The Mist that was one of Stephen King's short stories, I think from Skeleton Crew.
Yep.
Which is a group of people who are isolated, who are stuck in this little place. For Midnight Mass, it's an island. For The Mist, it's a grocery store. And as a result, they're making a community amongst themselves, and there's like a zealot character that comes up whose job, it seems, is to explain what's happening to everybody and to create sort of a cult around their explanations. And so Bev works that way, in the same way that there's a character in The Mist that kind of works that way as well, this sort of religious zealot who's explaining what's happening to the world around them, even though they have no idea. Even though both of those characters have no clue what they're talking about, they do it in such a way that it brings people over to their side. I do have a quick note here, just really quickly, which is that, the way that religious trauma works, and I love, just the way that it comes up in that very first scene with Riley when he's praying. When it becomes fractured, it's not necessarily like breaking a glass or breaking a mirror or something. It's more like a helium balloon kind of losing its tether. Like if you're at a theme park or a state fair or something, and a kid drops their balloon and you sort of see it kind of floating away. That's what it kind of feels like, I think, to lose faith. And that's how Riley's journey is kind of portrayed on the show. It's like he remembers what it was like to be held, but he's lost that tether. He can't find that anymore.
Yeah.
Right? And he's just drifting, trying to figure out where he's going next,
Yeah.
And I think that that's really good.
Yeah.
Industry Corner. We've talked about Netflix. So what I had in the Industry Corner was the Mike Flanagan Filmiverse, which we've kind of already talked through. He sort of breaks onto the scene with suspenseful films like Oculus and Hush. He makes these Netflix miniseries, these sort of long form Netflix miniseries. His post Netflix deal, it's been a little bit quieter for him, and not nearly, for when he was with Netflix, he was basically putting out a new series every October. And now he's really slowed down. I wonder, for you, what would you like to see from Mike Flanagan kind of going forward? Would you like to see more of these classic horror adaptations, more Stephen King stuff, or would you like to see him do something else?
All of the above.
Okay.
Quite frankly, I don't know that I lean one way. Maybe the Haunting film series aren't my favorite, but there's no denying that there's style and substance there, and thoughtfulness. And I like the way that you tied him to kind of earlier masters of the genre, right? Not kind of contemporary shock filmmakers. Not that there's anything wrong with that. They're just up to two different things.
Right.
No, I think I'm open to anything. I just was looking over this week, kind of news about him, and his Stephen King adaptation, The Life of Chuck, has been acquired out of TIFF by Neon. And those folks have great taste. If you look at a lot of the films they've released recently, they have good eyes, and it makes me hopeful.
Did Neon acquire Everything Everywhere? Was that a Neon thing?
No, that was A24. But Neon had Parasite.
That's right.
Which was a big awards contender, obviously. And, there's hope here. Maybe Flanagan's got something again, right, that is going to be critically and kind of commercially successful. But yeah, so I'm excited to see that, especially with the kind of Neon stamp of approval.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, so I guess I'm kind of open to all of it, not to be dismissive of the question, because I know what you're saying.
And the other good thing about it being Neon is that you know that it'll eventually show up on Hulu, which is good. So you'll have a spot to watch it.
Yeah, hopefully the Stephen King of it all gets it a wide release, the Neon, through their distribution. But yeah, you're exactly right. You will get to see it, if you have that service.
It's one of the frustrating things about movies, because there are a lot of good movies, and it's like distributors make it so hard for you to get to see them. And I don't know what that is, because we have a billion streaming platforms that can host these things, and it just seems like you have to go out of your way to find a lot of these really good movies. And I'm hoping that the industry kind of fixes that. I would like to see more Stephen King stuff, I think. Dr. Sleep is one of those movies that I think when it first came out, people didn't quite know what to make of it. It's also kind of an unenviable task to make a sequel to one of the greatest movies, maybe one of the greatest horror movies, and maybe one of the greatest movies ever made, with The Shining. And so, it felt like, okay, so who is this guy, think he is? Is he does he think he's the new Kubrick and all of this stuff? But Dr. Sleep is a slow burn. And I think the more you go back to that movie, the more you start to appreciate what he's trying to get at, which is a lot of the things that we've talked about in this, which is like childhood trauma, how you move past that in adulthood, all of this stuff, right?
Yep.
I don't know. I'm kind of at the point now where I think that I feel like Mike Flanagan is day old pizza or something. It's like you want to go back and watch his stuff because it tastes different, and it may taste better to you upon, like, if you give it 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I liked revisiting this, even though I knew what it was about, like the conceit of the show. And I think that, like, it made me focus on different aspects of the characters or their conversations with one another, that, now that like, oh, this is where this this is this jump scare, or this is the bloodletting or whatever, that just wasn't the thing to focus on. And I think it's a rewarding second viewing experience. Mm-hmm. I texted a buddy to let him know that we were doing this, and he was like, oh, I've rewatched it 3 or 4 times. I think it's, compelling. So
yeah. It holds up, and if you are in the world of professional religious anything, I think that it's worth seeing, because I think that it is. There are some people that are going to find it offensive. There are some people that are going to find it ridiculous, and I get that. But at its heart, it is about what happens when these stories and these lessons and the way to see the world that you were taught growing up, when all of that fails you, what happens? Like, how do you move on with your life? And this does that better than any show that I can think of. So
yeah, that's cool.
Okay, spin the wheel. We have 2 shows left for the year.
I'm going to solve. All right. Cornocuro cabinet.
Okay, it has landed on chaos. So Jeff Goldblum in our future.
Yeah, we watched the first episode last night. And we're hooked.
It has been one of the shows that has been most requested on our socials and our emails and stuff like that, of people saying you need to talk about chaos on your TV.
Giving the people what they want, Greg.
So that's what we're doing.
The
We're giving people
what we want.
There you go. So our next show will be Chaos. Ryan, thanks for hanging out on this little island with me. Just let me know if you ever make any deals with vampires so that I can book the next flight out.
Oh, you won't know. You'll feel it.
I'm going to start wearing scarves everywhere I go.
Yeah, you need to wear like a metal brace around your neck.
That's right. All right, we'll see you next time.